Is Peter Thiel the Antichrist? That is what we are discussing today. I've got Jimmy Akin with me, and this was actually sent to me by a friend of mine who he was the one who actually pointed me to the original supposed Antichrist figure, the Mahdi. Do you remember that guy? Have you seen in the videos on that topic? Yeah. So he sent me this guy, Peter Thiel, who is a billionaire and tech entrepreneur. We're going to talk about his story and get into some of the details here. But he's been doing a lot of strange things lately with respect to the Antichrist. And there was a video that popped up we're going to watch here shortly where he was actually asked if he's sort of unwittingly ushering in the Antichrist with the various projects that he's invested in. So let's go ahead and pull up that clip now so you guys can get a taste for what we're going to cover today. If I can find my scene here.
Before we get started with that, I might point out that being a billionaire at least puts you in better shooting distance of being the Antichrist than being an otherwise unknown Mahdi. So he's got that going for him. He also in this clip has like resting glum face, and that could go along with the Antichrist too.
Yeah, the only thing is that he's supposed to be sort of charismatic, if I understand it right. And he just, well, you guys will have to watch. You'll have to watch this clip. So this is Peter Thiel on the screen here, and the person interviewing him, remind me his name. Is it Russ?
Ross Douthat. He's a Catholic commentator for the New York Times. Also, we might want to mention what Peter Thiel is a billionaire for. He founded PayPal, and he's got a new company that manufactures armaments called Palantir. And he has a new company that manufactures armaments. He also has an information-based company called Palantir, named after the all-seeing orbs from the Lord of the Rings. So if you're building a super high-tech intelligence network for yourself with weapons, a little more in the direction of the Antichrist.
Yeah. Well, let's watch this interview because he poses a question to him about whether or not he's actually sort of helping the Antichrist get here. So let's just watch this because it's about 2 minutes long.
This is my very specific question for you, right? Is that you're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, in technologies of warfare, and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
I mean, isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing.
I mean, to be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
Well, but again, there are these different gradations of this we can describe, but is this so preposterous, what I've just told you, as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted.
So he doesn't really answer the question.
No, he totally whiffs. And to me, it's like, I mean, if I'm being humorous, but it's like, okay, this is exactly what the Antichrist would say. It's like, no, I'm not building the tools. I'm not building the tools for the Antichrist to take over. I'm warning you about the Antichrist. So, Yeah, I'm going to protect everybody against the Antichrist with all the intelligence, AI, and the tools I'm building and stuff like the weapons I'm building and stuff like that. You don't need to worry about me. I'm warning you about that other person who is most definitely not me.
Yeah. And I'm not helping them come into power.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned some other facts about Peter that made him sort of what he is today in terms of his influence and power. He's I think one of the top 100 or close to the top 100 most wealthy people in the world. Let's actually go to his Wikipedia page real quick. So Peter Thiel, born in 1967, as a German-American entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and political activist, co-founder of PayPal, Palantir Technologies, and Founders Fund. He was the first outside investor in Facebook. You may not have known that. According to Forbes, as of May 2025, Thiel's estimated net worth stood at $20 billion, making him the 103rd richest individual in the world.
Just missed the top 100. Well, I'm sure he'll get there.
Yeah. So what's interesting, though, is that he's actually, I believe, is actively giving a series of lectures on the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Why is he doing that? I can pull up that link as well.
Yeah, it's something he's very interested in. He identifies as a Christian, and specifically, if memory serves, he's Lutheran, but he has some unusual ideas. At one point, he described himself as having a kind of heterodox Christianity. More recently, he's said that he approaches the Bible in a more or less orthodox way. But he does have, Christian, he makes a Christian profession of faith, and he has actually been active in spreading that, in, attempting to promote the Christian faith in the San Francisco Bay Area community. One of his associates' wives has founded a foundation to try to promote the Christian faith in the area. And it's that foundation that is given this 4-part lecture series on the Antichrist. And so apparently there's lots of tech folks up there who are taking this seriously. And, Christians in the Bay Area have been encouraged to speak out against the, dominant secularism in the tech industry there. And so, those are good things.
So someone mentioned in the comments that I'm mispronouncing his name. It's Thiel, not Thiel. Peter Thiel. Okay.
Those
enough.
Germans and their THs.
One thing I've noticed that stuck out to me with this lecture series is that it says here these lectures are off the record.
Yeah.
If you're so concerned about the Antichrist, why would you not want to go on the record on this? Like, go produce some videos, warn people, get people what they need in order to prepare if this person is coming, or if we can do something to prevent them coming. Why do this off the record?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Now, of course, it could be marketing. If you create artificial scarcity, that's going to attract attention. And so this could just be, because he has been giving interviews about the Antichrist over the last year and stuff. Right. But to have this particular set of talks, it could be artificial scarcity to focus interest on it. If he was giving these talks out in public, there might be less interest in this. But they have been serious about this, about the off-the-record nature of this. There was a gentleman who attended like the first lecture, and then he wrote about it and disclosed what had been said, and they canceled his tickets for the rest of the talks. They said, you violated our off the record protocol that we explained to you repeatedly, and so you're no longer invited. You're persona non grata to the rest of these events.
Do you remember what he revealed about the first lecture?
It's been a while since I looked at the material, but it basically was a rehash of, my memory is that it was basically a rehash of Thiel's general ideas. He thinks that that the Antichrist is going to exploit current technological dangers and promise safety at the price of control of these technologies. So the idea would be if you that will limit technological development, and that will be the Antichrist. The Antichrist will be limiting the technological development of things like AI and autonomous weapons and things like that. And he seems to be opposed to that, but he also recognizes the danger that these technologies pose. I mean, they can pose existential risks. If you have AI and you give autonomous fire and controlled weapon systems and you let AI decide who lives and who dies, that can do a lot of bad stuff.
Right.
And so he's advocating trying to find some narrow path between Antichrist control and prohibition of these technologies being developed further, and unrestrained technological growth that poses its dangers. So he's trying to sail through Scylla and Charybdis, to use a reference from Greek mythology. He's trying to find a way between these two dangers, but exactly what that involves, I haven't yet heard him say.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of the question that interviewer asked, is like, doesn't it seem like you're kind of maybe setting things up in just the right way for an Antichrist figure to come to power? See, and does he have a good answer to that? I mean, in the interview itself, he didn't. So I don't know. But the deeper question, that's what sort of sparked this is this person himself the Antichrist? And so what we need to do at this point is actually look at what the Bible says about this, what various Christian sources have said about this, Christian church fathers, and you've actually got a really cool section in your book on this, on your the fathers know best. This is an amazing resource, guys. If you don't have this book, you need to buy it. It's basically what it is on various topics related to crucifixion or Mary, the saints, the miraculous, the last things, morality, the sacraments. He has basically just a list of what the church fathers have said about this, and he categorizes them chronologically. So from the very first mention of this topic to the last and the patristics. And it's just a really, really helpful resource if you guys are interested. The way that I use it is just sort of like research. If I'm looking into some specific topic, I'll look and see what the church fathers had to say about that topic. It's just such a great resource. I highly recommend that you guys get that. Before we turn to the biblical data and what the church fathers have said about the Antichrist, and maybe what some more modern church authorities have said, like the Catechism, I want to mention a giveaway that we have going on right now. So we are giving away this mug. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus on it. Yeah,
and it has the face from the Shroud of Turin on it.
Yeah, and we actually hired an artist to make this, so it's pretty cool. But it's like a Yeti mug. So I literally use this every single day for my coffee. It's it holds the temperature really well. It's really, really nice mug. But I have 11 of those left over from a previous fundraiser, and so we're going to give those away to any new patrons that sign up at the $25 amount level on our Patreon. So if you guys want to support the ministry, which we do need your help right now, we are still running at a deficit, and so we do need your help. And the way it works with a ministry like this is we rely on donations for the most part. That's that's where most of the finances come from, is from donations. So with ad revenue and stuff on YouTube, it just fluctuates too much to be able to rely on it. So we basically just can't. And so donations are super, super important. They're vital for a ministry like this. And that's why I talk about it so much. That's why I'm reminding you guys, this is a donor-based ministry, crowd-based ministry. So if you guys like this content, if you appreciate what we're doing, please go support us there. So, all right.
So how would people do that? Let's give them the practical. Here's where do you go to join at the $25 level and get your Shroud of Turin mug?
You can go in the description of the video. I've got a link to our website, and you can go there. You can actually make a one-time donation if you want to. That's not part of the giveaway right now, but if you sign up on our Patreon, there's a link there to our Patreon, and you can just sign up. It's actually a really easy process. So we have Yeah, we've made it pretty easy for you guys. So, all right, let's dig into the biblical material, some of the church fathers, what they've said. And some of the church fathers have said some really interesting things about the Antichrist, like the fact that they think some of them thought that he had to be Jewish.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start with the Bible then, because that's, where we get the concept of Antichrist from.
Right.
And there are three figures in the New Testament that people have identified with the Antichrist. So the term Antichrist itself actually is pretty uncommon in the New Testament. It only appears in 4 passages, and it only appears in 2 books. It appears in 1 John, and it appears in 2 John, and that's it. It doesn't appear, for example, in Revelation. But if you want to understand the Antichrist, we kind of got to start with, so how does the New Testament actually use the term? And in doing that, you would want to look at 1 John 2. That's the first place the Antichrist is mentioned. And John writes, he says, "Children, it is the last hour. And as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come." So, there is an Antichrist that's coming, but there's also a bunch of them. He says, "Therefore, we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they were not of us." So these many Antichrists, they were actually there in the first century, and they had been part of the Christian community, but then they had left it. And he says, "For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out, that it might become plain that they all are not of us. But you have been anointed by the Holy One, and you all have knowledge. I write to you not because you do not know the truth, but because you know it, and because no lie is of the truth. Who is the liar? But he who denies that Jesus is the Christ. This is the Antichrist, he who denies the Father and the Son." So that's an important statement that lets us identify the basic biblical use of the term Antichrist. It refers to someone who denies that Jesus is the Christ. And so that's what we get from John 2. The term is also mentioned a couple of chapters later in John 4. And in John 4, he says, "Every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard was coming and now is in the world already." So he indicates again that Antichrist does not confess Jesus, but he doesn't give us too much more information about it. We do get a little bit more information in the second book that uses the term, 2 John. In 2 John, he says, "Many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who do not confess the coming of Jesus Christ in the flesh. Such a one is the deceiver and the Antichrist." So the Antichrist, the way the Bible uses the term, is someone who denies the incarnation of Christ. So it's not just that they deny Christ, but specifically they deny the incarnation. So that's how the term Antichrist is used. Now, we could also look at the term itself. It's obviously composed of the Greek preposition anti and the word Christ, or Christos in Greek. Anti can mean in place of, so it could mean someone who substitutes themselves for Christ, or it could just mean against, someone who is against Christ. And there have been a lot of Christians who have tried to say it means substitute for Christ, someone who portrays themselves as the Christ. But here, I'm not sold on that. I think it's more plausible to take it in a more general sense of just someone who's just against Christ, since what we're told is that the Antichrist denies the incarnation and denies Jesus. He's not saying I'm him. He's saying no. Jesus isn't God's son. There is no incarnation. Something like that. So that's the basic concept of the Antichrist, and it's really pretty minimal. But people have built much more elaborate theologies of the Antichrist. So how do they do that? Well, they do it by combining the term Antichrist from John's letters with a couple of other, two or three other places in the New Testament. One of them is in Paul's letters to the Thessalonians, where he talks to the Thessalonians about how, the day of the Lord is not going to come until this event he calls the rebellion comes first, and that involves the revealing of a figure that Paul refers to as the man of lawlessness, or the son of destruction, meaning he's going to go to his destruction. So in some translations, they used to translate it man of sin, but really what it says in Greek is man of lawlessness. And so you have some people trying to take the term Antichrist from John and apply it to Paul's man of lawlessness. Then in the book of Revelation, we have two beasts that we meet. We have a beast in Revelation 13, we meet a beast from the sea, and we also meet a beast from the land. And the beast from the sea, whose number is 666, people have also taken the term Antichrist from the letters and then applied it to the beast from the sea. So even though the term Antichrist is only used in 4 places in John's letters, people have tried to combine it with these other passages from 2 Thessalonians and from the book of Revelation. And the extent to which you can do that is, to my mind, questionable. In each of these cases, we're dealing with some kind of great villain in world history who opposes God, but whether they're all the same villain is a separate question. For example, if you study Revelation carefully, we have pretty good evidence that most of Revelation, including the parts about the beast, were actually fulfilled in the 1st century. And the beast's number, 666, is actually what Nero Caesar adds up to in Hebrew and Aramaic. And we have other material indicating that connecting the beast from the sea with a line of kings that persecutes Christians in the 1st century. And that sounds like the Roman emperors, including Nero. And so we have pretty good evidence that the beast in Revelation is at least primarily to be identified with the line of Roman emperors in the 1st century. And yet Antichrist is this final villain of world history. So the relationship between them may be more complex than many people assume. It may be that, okay, in Revelation, we had this line of Christian persecuting emperors that foreshadow the final villain of world history, but are not identical with the final villain of world history. So we need to be a little careful in the inferences we make and not just assume it's all the same thing with no distinctions. At least that would be my perspective.
So 2 things, if I can remember both. So the first thing seems to be that in these letters in John, it seems to already rule out Peter Thiel as the Antichrist, if he's an identifying Christian.
Well,
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if he confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh, he's not the Antichrist. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and
by the way, guess what that also rules out? It rules out the Reformation era Protestant claim that the Pope is the Antichrist, because the Pope's whole job is, I'm the successor of that guy who came in the flesh, right? So the Pope isn't the Antichrist either.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. So back to your point about the sort of connecting the various biblical passages together in maybe a dubious fashion. What do you see when you look at the church fathers of patristics? Do they do that too, or do they stick to just the letters in John? How do they? What do they do?
There's not a single perspective that the church fathers have. We're talking about bunches of guys who lived over a period of 600 or 700 years. So they have different perspectives. What I did in The Fathers Know Best was I wanted to show that the church fathers did not agree with the Reformation era Protestant idea that the Antichrist is the Pope, that he's a religious leader. And so what I did was I went through different passages and surveyed the fathers on what they said. And one of the things they said, now they did tend to extend the term Antichrist to cover things outside of John's letters, like the beast from the sea. But they recognize that this is a political leader, that this is a major world leader who's going to persecute Christians, and that's their basic conception. So the church fathers agreed it's not going to be someone like the Pope. It's not going to be a religious leader. It's going to be a political leader, and that goes along with what we read about the beast from the sea. It also goes along with what we read about St. Paul's man of lawlessness. They seem to have political power that they use to persecute the church, and the church fathers agreed with that. They picked up on that from Paul and from the book of Revelation. They also have some interesting ideas that I would personally be skeptical of. Like, one of the claims that many church fathers made was that the Antichrist will be Jewish and that he will specifically be from the tribe of Dan. And where they get that from is in the book of Revelation. There is a figure that a group, it's a collective figure that we see in opposition to the beast. The beast, he marks people on the forehead with his number 666, and in opposition to that, we see a group of 144,000 male Jewish virgins from 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, and they are marked with God's name on their forehead. So you have the mark of the beast versus the mark of God, indicating who these two different groups of people belong to, the followers of the beast and the followers of Jesus. And in the list of the 12 tribes of Israel, you can count the tribes different ways. And in Revelation, when it lists the 12 tribes that the 144,000 come from, Dan is not there. Dan is not in that list of the 12 tribes. They're counted differently in that list. And so that led some of the church fathers to wonder about, well, why would Dan not be in this list? Dan is the northernmost tribe of the 12 tribes. Why wouldn't Dan be here? And the answer that was proposed is, oh, well, maybe that's the tribe that the Antichrist comes from. And so that's why Dan is excluded from this list of all these righteous followers of Christ, because Antichrist comes from that tribe. And so you have some of the church fathers saying, okay, it's a political leader, but he's going to be Jewish and he's going to come from the tribe of Dan. Personally, now that would also, if that's right, it would also exclude Peter Thiel, because as far as I know, he's not a political leader from the Jewish nation and the tribe of Dan. But I actually don't think that particular theory is well supported. You'll notice how speculative it is. I mean, there's no mention of the Antichrist or even the beast in the list of the 12 tribes. It doesn't say that Dan is excluded because that's where the Antichrist comes from. That's just a guess. So this is an idea that's based on a guess. Also, in our day, the tribe of Dan is no longer identifiable. So we couldn't verify if someone was from the tribe of Dan if they were Jewish, or even if they're not Jewish. We couldn't evaluate, is someone a Danite or not. And so I think this idea is just too speculative and not well supported for my money.
So even if Peter Thiel is not the Antichrist, we've sort of ruled him out based on the biblical data. It could still be the case that he's helping to usher that in.
He could be unwittingly laying the groundwork for the Antichrist by building these technologies that will be used either as boogeymen by the Antichrist on his theory, or as tools of the Antichrist on other theories.
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily rule him out of the game totally.
Yeah. And I think he got kind of cold cocked by that question from Ross Duthot, because it's like, couldn't you just be laying the groundwork for Antichrist? And that's a really good question, and he didn't have a really good answer.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy, would you like to turn now to the Catechism, or is there anything else you'd like to cover before we get there?
No, sure. The Catechism is the Church's current most authoritative statement on the Antichrist. And if people want to look it up, it's paragraphs 675 to 677 that deal with the Antichrist. And I hate to say it, but they just so missed an opportunity. I mean, come on. Paragraph 676 is right here. That's 10 paragraphs different from 666. They just should have readjusted the paragraph numbers so that we're reading about the Antichrist in paragraph 666. So that was a missed opportunity. But you got the text there on the screen. So paragraph 675. Now this is dealing with the events that immediately precede Jesus's second coming. And it says, before Christ's second coming, the church must pass through a final trial that will shake the faith of many believers. Persecution that accompanies her pilgrimage on earth will unveil the mystery of iniquity, that's a phrase from the New Testament, in the form of a religious deception, offering men an apparent solution to their problems at the price of apostasy from the truth. The supreme religious deception, so there can be many of them, but the supreme religious deception is that of the Antichrist. And then it says something that will be quite unexpected for many people. Instead of saying something like a political leader who does X, Y, and Z, or a religious leader who does X, Y, and Z, it defines the Antichrist as a pseudo-messianism, which would be a movement by which man glorifies himself in place of God and of his Messiah come in the flesh. So the way the term Antichrist has evolved in Catholic religious language, it no longer is associated only with an individual. Instead, the Catechism, as you can see there from the footnote to John 2, the Catechism is drawing on the idea that there are many antichrists, and so it conceptualizes this final villain of world history not just as a single individual, but as a movement, a pseudo-messianism where man glorifies himself in the place of God, and thus denies, the role of Christ in true religion. So
it's not hard to see why technology could be speeding that process up. The more I feel like the more we get entrenched in our iPhones and everything else, the less interest we have in spiritual things and God. Mm-hmm. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now, I should point out, just because you've got a movement doesn't mean that there's not an individual Antichrist, because movements tend to have leaders. So I don't doubt at all that there's likely to be a single Antichrist that is at the head of this pseudo-messianic movement before Christ's second coming. Then the Catechism goes on to say, the Antichrist deception already begins to take shape in the world every time the claim is made to realize within history that messianic hope which can only be realized beyond history through the eschatological judgment. So anytime, whether it's the Nazis or the communists or anybody else telling you we're going to bring in heaven on earth with all of our social reforms, that's an echo of the Antichrist's deception, because we're living in an age that it is just flawed. We're not going to have paradise on earth. The church.
Well, what about MAGA? What about MAGA?
Well, if there are MAGA supporters who think that heaven on earth is going to be ushered in, that they would be biting into an echo of Antichrist deception. The same thing would be true of people on the other side of the fence who it's like, Trump is the Antichrist, and as soon as we get rid of him, it's going to be heaven on earth once the Democrats are back in power. Okay, that would be an echo of Antichrist deception too. Whichever way you go, we're not getting heaven on earth. And thus, the Catechism says, the church has rejected even modified forms of this falsification of the kingdom to come under the name of millenarianism, especially the intrinsically perverse political form of secular messianism. You're not going to find the Messiah as a politician who's going to save the world no matter what party you think he belongs to. The Catechism then says the church will enter the glory of the kingdom only through this final Passover, meaning this final persecution it's going to have to undergo, when she will follow her Lord in his death and resurrection. So just like Jesus died and then rose from the dead, before Jesus comes back, the church is going to almost die, and then Christ's going to come back to save her. The kingdom will be fulfilled then, it says, not by a historic triumph of the church through a progressive ascendancy, but only by God's victory over the final unleashing of evil, which will cause his bride to come down from heaven. God triumphs over the revolt of evil that will take the form of the last judgment after the final cosmic upheaval of this passing world. So we will get there eventually. We'll get the new heaven and the new earth, but first we're going to have to go through this final unleashing of the forces of evil that will ultimately take place through the Antichrist and the Antichrist movement.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. So maybe I'll just ask the question one more time. Is Peter Thiel the Antichrist? What's your assessment?
No, but he could unwittingly be paving the way for the Antichrist, because the technologies we're dealing with now they have really destructive potential. Artificial intelligence and autonomous weapon systems and things, those do pose existential threats to humanity, especially artificial intelligence. And so he could be working on tools that eventually will be used in connection with the rise of the Antichrist, either with the Antichrist using these tools as boogeymen and saying, let's freeze all technological development and let me, the Antichrist, be in charge of it, or in terms of the Antichrist saying, oh, there's all these world threats out there, I better use all these tools like AI and autonomous weapons on behalf of mankind in order to save mankind from the different threats that are out there. So whether the Antichrist is trying to clamp down on these technologies the way Peter Thiel thinks, or whether he is actively using the technologies, Peter Thiel could be one of the tech entrepreneurs that builds the tools that will eventually be used by this persecuting anti-Christian movement.
What about the objection that, we talked about it a little bit, the fact that he is a self-professing Christian, shouldn't that lead us to think that he's not the Antichrist? But couldn't someone respond and say, well, wouldn't the Antichrist just lie, about their actual devotion?
Well, he could, but unless you have evidence, you can say that about anybody. Someone could come along and say, Cameron Bertuzzi's not a real Christian, he's just lying. Or Jimmy Akin's not a real Christian, he's just lying. Well, what evidence do you have for those claims? You have to take, the evidence you have and consider it and not undermine it based on evidence you don't have. So if you have evidence that Peter Thiel is a Christian and that he is concerned about the Antichrist, you need to take that evidence seriously. You can't just say, well, what if he's lying or something like that, and use evidence you don't have to undermine evidence you do have. On the other hand, like I said, he could be, as I've said, he could be paving the way for Antichrist unwittingly, in which case he would be what is sometimes been referred to, like during the Cold War, Soviets would refer to people who they could use, even if the person disagreed with them, as useful idiots. And so, hypothetically, Peter Thiel could be a useful idiot for the Antichrist, even though they disagree.
Let's go through some super chats. Sir Cadzalot says, maybe he's just Henry Van Straten from Doctor Who. I don't know who this is. You'll have to inform me.
Oh, Henry Van Straten. Let's see. That's been a while.
Did you watch Doctor Who?
Oh yeah, I've seen all of Doctor Who, but in 60 years of TV programs, I don't remember all the names of every character. And Henry Van Straten looks like, let's see. This is looking a little more familiar. Let me just verify it. Yeah, Henry Van Straten was a character who he was an American multi-billionaire who had invested in a collection of alien technology, and that led to bad consequences in the Ninth Doctor's time. Among other things, he had a Dalek that he was keeping in a cage.
I don't know what any
Daleks
of
are
that
bad
means.
news. Oh, okay. Daleks are these cyborg type aliens that are evil and hateful. They're basically space Nazis.
Space Nazis. Gotcha. All right, that's too nerdy for me. All right, New Gloff says, listen to the song "I Hate Antichrist" by John Mouse. I don't know what that is.
Oh, I don't know that one.
That, yeah.
Well, I approve of the sentiment, though. I'm not a fan of Antichrist either.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and close down the stream. This one was a short one today. We just wanted to talk briefly about this. This is a topic that comes up every now and then. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you, Jimmy, for hanging out with me. And we'll see you guys later.
And before we go, though, don't forget, I mean, you mentioned the Shroud of Turin mug that you have as a special offer for people who make new pledges at Patreon. And if you go to patreon.com/capturingchristianity, or if you go into the link under this video, you can get there. And Cameron is a coffee drinker. He says he uses his every day, and you can do the same thing. And as well as supporting this channel and the work that it's doing, trying to, get the facts out to people and consider modern Christian issues that interact with, the news cycle and what's going on in our culture and stuff. We need Christian analysis like that. And so you can help Cameron keep doing it by becoming a Patreon supporter. And I hope you'll get one of those last 11 special mugs that he's got available.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video. I've got a live stream tomorrow with Zachary King, who is an ex-Satanist who became a Christian. It should be a really, really interesting interview. So stay tuned. Lots more coming. We'll see you guys in the next video. See you guys later.